Hey, what's up? I just want to riff on the whole Bungie situation and just the whole gaming industry and what's going on with layoffs and stuff like that. So, if you haven't already heard, Bungie, the developer and studio, and at one time publisher behind Destiny 2, and a long time ago, the beginnings of the Halo series, are now owned by Sony, not by PlayStation, a thing to keep in mind. And they just had a big set of layoffs. Now, this unfortunately isn't news in the gaming industry this year. Layoffs have been a constant, I believe, at this point, and we don't know how many people were laid off of Bungie yet, but we're talking about over 6,000 game industry jobs that have experienced layoffs. From huge, the biggest of the big studios and publishers like EA, Ubisoft has had layoffs. I believe, I can't remember, I think Rockstar even did, all the way down to the indie games and stuff like that. And unfortunately, when the small studios lay people off, it's also they tend to be shutting down as well. So I think there's a few points of this that are tough that I'll try to get through quickly. The one being that, like, I generally understand how corporations work. I understand that Sony is a giant corporation that owns PlayStation and owns their like headphone divisions and their phone divisions, and that it's Sony and then a bunch of subsidiaries underneath them, and that in a lot of ways those subsidiaries get treated as individual businesses. And just because Sony is doing really well, say they're having record profits, that doesn't necessarily mean that each of their individual subdivisions are doing as well. And since they treat those subsidiaries like their own little businesses, despite the mothership, Sony, maybe having a good year, one of those subsidiaries can be having a really bad year and can lead to layoffs and things like that. I understand how that technically works. But then you look at a situation where, just recently, just last week, I believe we found out about Sony, PlayStation first party studios doing layoffs, like Naughty Dog and other big studios that they have. Which is insane because, we have the Spider-Man 2 just came out. It's going to sell gangbusters. The PlayStation 5 is selling like crazy, like absolute hotcakes. They, are only just now getting them consistently in stock. They're selling so many of those, and they're selling them for so much money, and they've got to be making so much money. This new version of the PlayStation 5 coming out is the fourth or fifth revision of the PlayStation 5. Which the first few, the console never looked different. And what you need to realize what that was the very first launch PS5 had a ton of metals in it for cooling and things like that. The most recent version of the old PlayStation 5, and likely the new one as well, has way less material in it, and that has saved them so much money. They're also getting up to scale, which means they're making enough of these parts that those parts are getting cheaper. And they're making so much money off consoles right now. They have all of these legendary first party titles that are making so much money right now for them, especially their new ones like Spider-Man 2. And yet they're still laying off huge swaths of their teams. And now this happens to Bungie. There were some rumors back and forth, and we still don't know everything exactly, that, well, maybe this was a Sony cut, maybe Bungie didn't have anything to do with it. And now there's some information leaking out that maybe that's not true. Maybe this was a Bungie call. And it really doesn't matter whose call it was. It's so hard, I think, as a general consumer who maybe doesn't understand the business enough, who maybe, isn't smart enough or whatever, to see these companies making record profits, making insane amounts of profit, but still treating their company like it's about to fail. I understand that they have to try to meet, these publicly traded companies have to try to meet these metrics and these numbers that they've given to their shareholders, in that there is, and especially in capitalism as a system, this idea of infinite growth. Like, Google will never stop growing, PlayStation will never stop growing, which just isn't true. There is a upper level, right? And it's just so hard that even though I understand typically why these things happen, it's still, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, I get the reasoning, it just seems like the reasoning is wrong, right? And it's not just PlayStation, it's not just Sony or Bungie. This has been a big thing all year, and it's just, every time it happened, you know, it just happened to BioWare a couple months ago, where they cut all of these like really legendary and well-known developers and writers and stuff from their teams, and you know, it gets written off, and people tried to make a less of a big deal about it, and that maybe even included myself at times. And we've heard these stories for years that it's not unusual for teams to expand and contract as they ramp up for a new game and as they wind down for a new game. But this just seems more than that. This seems scummier. This seems awful. And what's so hard about it, in the gaming industry especially, the game industry is unique in that you have a lot of people who are very artistic and in that kind of mindset, who want to create and be creative and have passion and mold and iterate on things that get them excited and that they love and that they want to present to other people. The gaming industry may be the closest that those type of people are to corporate suits who only care about numbers. There's such a small gap between those people in the gaming industry, because you have developers and their managers and those people's managers, and then typically the suits, and it's so hard, because those type of people, the people who have that mindset, who have that creative artistic mindset that is absolutely required in video game development, they aren't necessarily here for the corpo attitudes and all of this obsession with profits and things like that, but they're absolutely essential to making these amazing games. The 2023 has been one of the most amazing years for gaming and for gamers ever, and there's just so many good games. 10 games probably that could be arguments for game of the year in any other year, and some of those games are going to get forgotten this year. Such an insanely good year for gaming, from the AAA to the indie scene. But for game makers, for developers and studios, and the people who are absolutely essential to give us these products, it's maybe been the worst year ever. I don't know how, in an industry where, sure, we've got like seasoned vets who are doing their thing and people who maybe have a decent amount of experience, every industry needs new people in the industry, right? For its long-term health and growth. And how in the world do you look some 20-something-year-old person in the eyes right now and say, yeah, get into the gaming industry if you know how to program or model or do these things with a computer that are pretty specialized skills? Get into the gaming industry, because you might lose your job at any moment, no matter how amazing you or your company is doing. Like, this is going to hurt the gaming industry in the long run. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if it's unions. I don't know if it's, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, and I hope other people are working on that, because right now this isn't sustainable. What's happening is gonna drive away young talent from the industry. It's gonna drive away veteran talent from the industry, and it's going to make the people who stay miserable. And games are for fun. Games are supposed to be an escape. And the people who make the games, who are the reason these companies and these suits make these millions and billions of dollars, shouldn't have to worry about their day-to-day lives or affording their house and things like that, when they, and with the rest of their teams, are creating so much, both from an artistic point of view and a financial point of view. It just seems wrong. It just seems inappropriate. And it really makes being a fan of games, a gamer, a content creator like I am, it makes it all feel so scummy, because you're so happy on one side and you're so just depressed and beaten down on the other side. And I'm not even one of these people being directly affected by it. It's just, I'm seeing it, and I'm seeing what these people are going through, and it just seems unnecessary. It seems greedy, and it just seems plain awful. That's what I have to say about it. Subscribe to the channel if you want more gaming stuff. Follow me on the socials at Bon Diesel. Be supportive of these people who just lost their jobs, even if it's just to say I'm sorry, and try to be nice to everybody. That's all I have for this one. So until next time.